The Galactic Confederation had rules, lots of them, meticulously crafted protocols that had maintained a delicate peace across 3,000 known star systems for nearly 2 centuries. Every species had its place, its role, its carefully negotiated position in the grand interstellar hierarchy. Humans, as usual, didn't get the memo. When humanity first entered the galactic stage, everyone expected a typical trajectory. Some mild technological posturing, diplomatic fumbling, the standard new species introduction package, complete with awkward cultural misunderstandings and gradual integration. Instead, humans arrived like a hurricane at a tea party. Within a decade, they'd revolutionized trade networks, disrupted established economic models, and developed technologies that made other species' research look like elementary school science projects. The Confederation's diplomatic corps spent more time managing bureaucratic heart palpitations than actual diplomacy whenever humans were involved, and the Zyrean Collective watched and plotted. A hybrid organization that was part terrorist network, part economic superpower, the Zyreans specialized in systemic manipulation. They didn't just destabilize governments, they dismantled entire economic ecosystems with surgical precision. Kidnappings, technological blackmail, strategic economic warfare, these were their tools, wielded with cold, calculated efficiency. They'd toppled 17 planetary governments, crashed 3 major galactic economic systems, held entire research networks hostage. And they were about to make their first serious mistake: underestimating humanity. The preliminary reports about human behavior were confusing. Humans appeared simultaneously primitive and ingenious. They would spend hours arguing about the most trivial matters, then solve complex interstellar engineering problems in an afternoon. Their technological development followed no predictable pattern. Their political systems defied traditional analysis. Most critically, humans seemed to fundamentally misunderstand the concept of impossible. When the Zyrean leadership analyzed human communication patterns, psychological profiles, and historical conflict resolution methods, they saw opportunity. Humans could be predictable. Humans could be controlled. Humans could be a perfect target. What the Zyreans didn't realize was that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology. It wasn't military might. It was something far more dangerous. Humans found everything funny, and they never ever played by anyone else's rules. Jake Ryder was not a hero. He was a problem solver, with an increasingly complicated definition of problem. Officially, he worked as a senior logistics coordinator for Terran Galactic Enterprises, a glorified title that essentially meant he was humanity's most accomplished professional bureaucracy ninja. 10 years of corporate experience had taught him that most conflicts could be resolved with the right combination of paperwork, sarcasm, and caffeine. His sister Elena was different. Where Jake navigated corporate systems, Elena pushed the boundaries of scientific understanding. A xenobiological researcher specializing in extreme environment adaptation, she'd spent the last 5 years developing terraforming technologies that could transform uninhabitable planets into living ecosystems. The recent diplomatic tensions hadn't helped anyone's mood. 6 months earlier, the Centauri Confederation had attempted to block human research teams from exploring the Omega Quadrant, a region rich with potentially habitable planetary systems. Their reasoning was classic bureaucratic nonsense. Humans were too unpredictable and potential destabilizing agents. Jake had personally submitted a 247-page response document that was 60% technical data, 30% passive-aggressive commentary, and 10% interpretive dance metaphors explaining human scientific methodology. The response was so comprehensively bizarre that it actually got approved, primarily because no committee wanted to admit they hadn't fully read it. The Zyrean Collective had been watching, waiting. Their motivations were complex but ultimately simple: control. Not just political control, but economic control. By strategically manipulating research access, technological development, and planetary colonization rights, they could create artificial scarcity and maximize their profit margins. Elena's terraforming research was their ultimate prize. A technology that could transform any planet into a habitable zone would completely disrupt their existing economic models. Entire planetary development markets would collapse. Their carefully constructed monopolies would crumble. Kidnapping her wasn't just a strategy, it was a message. Jake understood institutional thinking. He knew exactly how the Zyreans calculated their moves, cold, mathematical, with zero room for human unpredictability. They assumed humanity would follow standard diplomatic protocols, file reports, submit appeals, negotiate. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Some people plan chess moves, Jake often told his best friend Kai Rodriguez. Humans play 4D Monopoly, with rules we're making up as we go along. What made Jake dangerous wasn't his technical skills, though those were considerable. What made him dangerous was his complete disregard for established process when something actually mattered. And right now, what mattered was getting his sister back, by any means necessary. The transmission came at 300 hours, Galactic Standard Time. Not that time zones meant much anymore, but bureaucrats loved their standardization. Incoming priority alert. The holographic display flickered, casting an eerie blue light across Jake's cramped apartment. Kai's voice cut through the silence. "You're going to want to see this." The video was professionally produced, which was the first warning sign. The Zyrean Collective didn't do amateur hour. Elena sat in a sterile white room, looking more annoyed than frightened. Behind her, a masked figure spoke with clinical precision. "Dr. Elena Ryder, your terraforming research represents an unacceptable disruption to established planetary development protocols. Your cooperation is mandatory." Jay's coffee mug stopped halfway to his mouth. "Mandatory," he repeated to Kai. They used the word mandatory. The ransom demand was elegant in its complexity. Not money, not traditional resources. They wanted full access to Elena's research database, complete transfer of her technological patents, and a guarantee that her work would be managed through Zyrean research channels. The Terran diplomatic corps response was predictably glacial. "We are establishing a committee," Ambassador Franklin had said during the emergency video conference, his holographic image looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "We'll form a working group to analyze the negotiation parameters." Jake counted exactly 7 bureaucratic buzzwords in that single sentence. "We don't have time for committees," Jake interrupted. "They have my sister." The breakdown was immediate and spectacular. The diplomatic channels, which had always been a delicate dance of protocol and passive-aggressive note-taking, suddenly looked like a kindergarten finger-painting session. The Zyrean Collective had calculated their move perfectly. By targeting Elena, they'd selected a victim who was simultaneously a critical scientific researcher, from a species known for valuing individual freedom, connected to someone who understood complex systems. What they hadn't calculated was Jake. Kai's research revealed the depth of the threat. Elena's terraforming technology wasn't just a scientific breakthrough, it was a potential galactic game-changer. Planets that were previously uninhabitable could be transformed. Entire star systems could be colonized. The economic implications were staggering. "They want to control who lives where," Kai explained, pulling up holographic star charts. "Right now, planetary development is a trillion-credit industry controlled by a handful of corporations. Elena's research blows that entire model apart." The initial challenges were formidable. The Zyrean Collective had multiple hidden bases across different star systems, advanced encryption technologies, diplomatic immunity in several key sectors, a reputation for never leaving evidence. Jake had a very bad attitude, a corporate expense account, a best friend who could hack anything. Zero patience for bureaucratic nonsense. "We're going to need a plan," Kai said. Jake's smile was not reassuring. "Oh, I've got a plan, and the Zyreans are going to hate every single minute of it." The stakes were simple. Get Elena back. Dismantle the Zyrean Collective's entire operational infrastructure. Make them regret ever thinking they could mess with a human's family. Just another Tuesday. The first rule of corporate warfare, which Jake knew intimately, was that the most devastating attacks never looked like attacks at all. "We're not going to fight them," Jake explained to Kai, spreading out a collection of digital maps and corporate registration documents that looked like a conspiracy theorist's fever dream. "We're going to bureaucratically disassemble them, piece by piece." Gathering allies wasn't traditional. Jake didn't want soldiers or warriors. He wanted specialists in the art of systematic destruction. First recruit, Melinda Rodriguez, his former corporate law school classmate who now worked in interstellar regulatory compliance. She had a photographic memory and a processing speed that made supercomputers look sluggish. One video call was all it took. "They've got diplomatic immunity." Melinda's holographic image raised an eyebrow. "Watch me find the one microscopic regulatory loophole that makes their entire operation illegal." Second recruit, Dr. Marcus Wong, a quantum network architect who had been fired from 3 different research institutions for being too creative, which in human terms meant he could break any system designed by anyone else. "I can redirect their communication networks," Marcus explained, fingers already dancing across multiple holographic interfaces. "Not just interrupt, completely rewrite their operational protocols." The plan took shape like a beautiful, terrifying algorithm. The Zyreans believed in control, in predictability, in following established patterns of economic and political manipulation. Humans excelled at turning those patterns inside out. Jake's strategy wasn't about direct confrontation. It was about creating so much bureaucratic chaos that the Zyrean Collective would collapse under the weight of their own complexity. Step 1. Financial deconstruction. Marcus discovered a series of nested financial transactions that formed the Zyrean Collective's economic backbone. With surgical precision, he began introducing microscopic inconsistencies, not enough to trigger immediate alarms, just enough to create growing uncertainty. "I'm essentially giving their financial systems administrative anxiety," Marcus grinned. "Every transaction will now require triple verification. Imagine doing that across thousands of interstellar accounts." Step 2. Regulatory warfare. Melinda was a weapon of mass administrative destruction. She identified 17 separate regulatory frameworks that the Zyrean Collective was technically violating, some dating back to obscure treaties signed centuries ago. This treaty from the Proxima Centauri Accord. It specifically prohibits economic entities from maintaining communication networks that cross more than 6 star systems without explicit multilateral approval, she explained, her voice a mixture of professional excitement and pure, unadulterated glee. Step 3. Technological disruption. Kai's role was to create technological noise, not destruction, disruption. "I'm going to make their secure communication channels play smooth jazz," Kai announced. "Randomly, unpredictably, in the middle of what they think are ultra-secure transmissions." Jake's corporate experience had taught him something critical. Large organizations were more fragile than they appeared. One small disruption could create cascading system failures. They weren't just attacking the Zyrean Collective. They were systematically removing its ability to function. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. Elena herself. Crypted within her standard research communications which the Zyreans had been monitoring was a series of quantum encryption keys. Not just any keys. Keys that could potentially trace the terrorist organization's entire communication network. She knew, Jake realized. She's been collecting this information, knowing they were watching. By the time their preparation was complete, the Zyrean Collective would face a death by 1,000 bureaucratic cuts. No single action would look like an attack. Each would seem like a minor, almost insignificant disruption. But together, they would create a systemic collapse that would be studied in galactic strategy courses for generations. "Ready?" Jake asked, looking at his team. Kai grinned. "Absolutely." Marcus cracked his knuckles. "Let's break some systems." Melinda just smiled, the kind of smile that made corporate lawyers worldwide instinctively check their legal insurance. The counteraction was about to begin. The Zyrean Collective's primary command center was supposed to be impenetrable. Located in the heart of the Sigma Quadrant, it was a fortress of technological sophistication, multiple quantum encryption layers, holographic defense systems, and enough firepower to obliterate a small planetary system. They never considered that their greatest vulnerability wasn't external, it was bureaucratic. Jake's team struck simultaneously on multiple fronts, not with weapons, with paperwork, digital disruption, and a level of chaos that defied traditional military strategy. At precisely 600 hours, every single Zyrean communication channel suddenly erupted into smooth jazz. Not just any smooth jazz. Specifically, a meticulously curated playlist of Earth's most irritating elevator music. "Is that Kenny G?" the lead Zyrean communications officer asked, bewildered, as a saxophone solo cut through their most secure strategic briefing. Simultaneously, their financial systems began to implode. Each transaction now required 17 separate authentications. Transfers that once took milliseconds now took hours. Their entire economic infrastructure ground to a bureaucratic halt. Marcus had designed the attack like a digital symphony. Layers of complexity that would make a quantum mathematician weep. "They're going to be so confused," Kai muttered, watching the holographic displays. "Confusion is our greatest weapon." The direct engagement wasn't a military assault. It was an administrative nightmare. Melinda had discovered an obscure interstellar regulatory clause that technically classified the Zyrean Collective as a non-compliant economic entity. With a few keystrokes, she froze their entire operational budget across multiple star systems. "Bureaucratic warfare," she explained to Jake. "They think they're playing chess. We're playing 4D Monopoly, with rules we're making up as we go." The Zyrean leadership's emergency meeting quickly devolved into panic. Their communication networks were compromised, their financial systems were locked, and, inexplicably, smooth jazz continued to play in the background. "We are being attacked," the lead strategist declared, "but I have no idea how." Jake's final move was elegantly simple. Using Elena's encrypted research data, the very information they had kidnapped her to obtain, he broadcast their entire operational network to the Galactic Confederation. Not as an attack, as a regulatory compliance report, complete with footnotes. The twist was beautiful in its complexity. By submitting their entire operational details through official channels, Jake essentially forced the Zyrean Collective to explain their own illegal activities in exhaustive, mind-numbing detail. "Humans don't negotiate with terrorists," Jake muttered. "We administratively disassemble them." The confrontation lasted less than 4 hours, no weapons fired, no traditional combat, just a systematic dismantling of an entire terrorist organization through the most dangerous weapon in humanity's arsenal, bureaucratic innovation. As the final systems collapsed, Elena, who had been cleverly feeding her captors misinformation the entire time, simply walked out of their secure facility. "Took you long enough," she told Jake when he arrived. He handed her a cup of coffee. "Want to hear about how we completely destroyed a terrorist organization before lunch?" He grinned. "Always." The aftermath was predictably chaotic. The Galactic Confederation spent 3 months trying to understand exactly what had happened. Committees were formed, reports were written, entire research teams dedicated themselves to analyzing how a single human logistics team had completely dismantled a terrorist organization that had survived for centuries. Official diplomatic channels described the incident as a strategic administrative intervention. Unofficially, every species in the galaxy was simultaneously terrified and impressed. Elena's terraforming research, now freed from the Zyrean Collective's attempted suppression, revolutionized planetary development. Entire star systems that were previously considered uninhabitable became potential colonies. The Centauri Confederation, which had previously blocked human research, now begged for collaborative agreements. During a galactic press conference, Jake was asked how they managed such a comprehensive takedown. "Paperwork," he said simply. "Never underestimate middle management." Kai leaned in and whispered, "They're going to write academic papers about this for generations." Elena just smiled. The Zyrean Collective's communication systems were still occasionally interrupted by random smooth jazz performances, a subtle reminder that some jokes never get old. Somewhere in the vast expanse of space, humanity had once again proven that the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun. It's a well-formatted complaint.